Good evening, everybody, and you're all very welcome to this Involve Pride for All intersectional event. As people are joining us, please feel free to tell us who you are and where you are. We are in the wild and wonderful ways of mostly Dublin, Ireland, but we do have Kirsty in Belfast and we do have Suki in London. So please feel free to share with us where you are, how you're doing, and how you're enjoying this evening. So who do we have with us so far? Do we have anyone prepared to share with us where they are and how they're getting on?
Rachel from London just did a hello. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. Kirsty, how's your day in Belfast today?
My day in Belfast has been very good, very nice. My daughter's friend came and had a socially distanced afternoon with her in the garden, so all positive.
That's nice. Is the sun shining for you, Kirsty?
It actually is. Just within the last 15 minutes, it has finally appeared for the first time today. The frozen earth is warming up.
Good. Delighted to hear that. It's a pretty sunny day in Dublin. John, are you warm in Dublin today?
I'm roasting and I'm trying to avoid the sun here as it goes around the room. So
nice problem to have, isn't it?
I didn't think this morning it was going to be so good, but it's a great day.
What about you, Deborah? How are you getting on? Where are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm in Dublin. I'm good. Yeah, it's pretty sunny outside. Although for some reason it's very dark on my camera, so I don't know if I need to change the angle. But yeah, I'm good.
Well, you've got a fabulous backdrop, so you're doing great just there. What about you, Suki? Where are you and how's your day?
Yeah, I'm in Barbican in the city in London, and it is gorgeously sunny.
Fantastic.
I think it's 31 degrees here. And I've just seen some people. Alice is in New York, has joined us, and Julie from New Jersey. So truly global audience today.
Yes,
Welcome.
we do. Thank you all for joining us. And I can see we still have participants joining. So we'll just give them another minute or two as they're joining. Suki, we have to ask, tell us how you have the Queen on your right-hand shoulder, looking over you, keeping an eye on you. Tell us how that came to pass.
So I'm a huge fan of the Queen. I have been for years. And last year she gave me an OBE for Services to Diversity in Business, which I'm very proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I had it as a present from a candidate about 7 years ago. And because of the office, we're probably not going to be going to the office for quite a while. So I had lots of artwork brought to my storage place here. And when I was directing the removal people, I saw the Queen and I said to them, she is coming with us and you better look after her very carefully. And it is like a life-size cardboard cutout of the Queen. And it was quite hilarious seeing so much cardboard packaged around her so they didn't damage her. And she arrived in one piece. She's like my guardian angel.
Well, I am delighted to hear that. She looks fantastic.
But she's also quite a good talking point. Because if you think about, we spend a lot of time with chairmen and talking to chairmen or VCing with them. And a lot of them tend to be Lord this, Lord that, Sir, whatever. So they're all big fans of the Queen as well. So it's quite a nice icebreaker to connect with some of them. So yeah, it's great.
Great. Well, good for you. Kirsty, you have a fabulous backdrop there. Tell us about your backdrop.
Yeah, my backdrop is the team photo of the Bank of Ireland group at Belfast Pride last year. So I'm actually in my own backdrop. I'm standing holding the trans pride flag. Just my hand disappears when I put it up here. Yeah, that was a fabulous day. Unfortunately, the sun was not shining that day, but we made up for it with our sunny dispositions.
Well done. Great colour. Fantastic. What about you, John? You have your own back wall, back feeling. You don't have a backdrop behind you today.
No, I don't have a backdrop, and I'm actually conscious where my head is as well because the painting is kind of a bit, there's violent scenes in it. So when I was just talking my head here earlier, I had to be careful to not, in case people got a little bit upset, that just where behind me there's a bit of action going on, which is not very child friendly for just to note. So.
Well, just to say, on behalf of everybody, we'll say that we're going to not notice what's in the backdrop behind you. We're going to try really hard to concentrate on what you're saying and not what's behind you. Okay, I think we have plenty of people here with us, so I think we'll get started. So I'm going to open the floor by just saying thank you so much to everybody who has taken the time to join us on this gorgeous evening for this Pride for All webinar. My name is Gannon, I'm with Evershed Sutherland. I'm based in Dublin, and I am Involve's Irish chair. On behalf of Involve and the Irish members, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this intersectional Pride event. We really do want this to be both a thought and action-provoking discussion, so I hope you have all of your best energy available to you this afternoon, this evening. I'm excited and humbled to be joined by four really sincerely genuinely groundbreaking and inspiring speakers. It's my pleasure to call most of you friends as well as co-speakers, and I'm really delighted to bring you all together. During the course of this evening, we're going to hear from Suki, we're going to hear from Deborah, we're going to hear from Kirsty, and we're going to hear from John. In turn, they will introduce themselves, and then they're going to share with us individually their views of the world based on their own lived experience. They're going to outline how they would suggest we can all work together, specifically so that we can push the prospects of diversity and inclusion beyond passive talk, tokenism, and commercialism. We're all done with that. It's time to move on. It's time to take action. And if we can intersectionally agree what those actions can be, we can really make a difference. So that's what this is about today. This is intended to be both a challenging and a provocative talk. The goal is that we can agree precisely what we can do, what you can each ask of us, the idea being that we can actually be the change we want to see. I'm going to take 1 minute to look back rather than just look forward, because before we jump to the future, I think it's really important that we reflect somewhat on the past, and in particular, the striking similarities that arise following the background to the riots, the protests, the social disobedience, whatever we want to call it, in 1969, the Stonewall riots, and the marches that followed in 1970. I'm going to quote Texan State Representative Eddie Rodriguez, and this is from the 1st of June 2020, obviously, and he's looking back, and he says, Stonewall was led by a Black trans woman demanding justice. Here we are in June 2020. Black Americans are once again demanding justice, and this fight is intersectional. In June 2020, the world, not just in the USA, is wrestling with these very similar issues. Racism and transphobia are to the forefront of this current civil rights movement. So today, here we are, and across the world, we want to see the force of intersectional support. When large groups who are not defined by sexuality, gender, the color of their skin, when they come together in the name of justice, equality, and inclusion, that force is quite literally forceful. So Storm Deliveran said of the 1969 Stonewall movement that it was a rebellion and an uprising, a civil rights disobedience. And I'm calling on you, everyone who's joining us here today and everyone who's going to speak to us this evening, to say, let's take this disobedience seriously and let's see what we can do to make a difference. So with that, herald to you, Suki, no better man to kick us off. Maybe you'd introduce us, we'll go around the room and then I'll come back to have a further chat with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Suki Sandhu. I'm the founder and CEO of Audalis and Involve, and I'm based in the city here in London, pronouns he, him. And what my companies do, Audalis is an executive search firm where we level the playing field for diverse talent. And diversity for us is gender, ethnicity, and LGBT plus primarily. So we've been established for over 9 years and have been driving representation at the top in business, both here and in Europe and the US. And then Involve is an inclusion consulting firm where we support businesses with being inclusive. So that's where we do things like an emerging leaders program. We have a cross-company mentoring program. We do lots of events around certain subjects with exec sponsors, for instance. And then we also publish these role model lists of the top 100 leaders globally who are ethnic minorities, who are women, and LGBT plus with our media partner, Yahoo Finance. And when we publish them, we reach millions of people globally because we want to challenge stereotypes about where people expect us to be as minorities, but also inspire the next generation of leaders. So that's me, and I'm going to hand over to John.
Hi all, and thank you, Suki. So many thanks everyone for the invite. I'm delighted to be here. My name is John McNamara. I identify as he, him, his. In my day job, I'm Managing Director of Canada Life International, which is a business based here in Dublin, a life insurance business selling into the UK. Part of a wider group of companies here in Dublin, including Irish Life, and all told about 3,500 employees. And when we're not all working from home, we're based in Lower Abbey Street in Dublin. I've been part of the Diversity and Inclusion Steering Group in our business for the last 5 years and acted as the exec lead last year. In my, I suppose, non-work life, I call it, I'm a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at Chartered Accountants Ireland. I sit on the fundraising committee for Belong To, an organisation some of you may know, but it's a fantastic nationwide organisation in this country supporting young LGBTQ people. And it's been fantastic working for Belong To over the last number of years. I also act as the chair of a charity which runs 2 amazing services. One is called spunout.ie, and Spunout again is based in Ireland. It's a national organisation which empowers young people to be the best they can through the provision of relevant information, which is all produced by young people for young people. And secondly, I'm also chair of 80808.ie, which is a text-based service launched just last week, fully funded by the HSE. And it's a 24/7 crisis text messaging service. And it's a key part of the government's mental health strategy, and is obviously also extremely relevant in the current environment we all find ourselves. So that's a brief snapshot for me. I'm going to now hand over to Kirsty.
I've messed it all up by being on mute. Thanks,
Don't
John.
worry.
My name's Kirsty Mulholland, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm sitting here in my home just outside Belfast. I work as a client relationship manager for Bank of Ireland, so I manage working capital facilities for about 60 or 70 businesses throughout Northern Ireland, mostly in counties Antrim, Tyrone and Derry. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I am co-chair of Bank of Ireland with Pride, which is our group LGBT plus employee network. And I was also the first trans woman ever to transition in work anywhere in Bank of Ireland group. And that was just 3 years ago, seems like a lifetime. So that's enough for me for now. And I would now like to introduce Deborah.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I work in PwC. I'm a consultant, assistant manager in our advisory practice, specifically our people and organisation practice. I qualified as a chartered accountant there in 2018, and I joined the Diversity and Inclusion Chartered Accountants Ireland Diversity and Inclusion Committee alongside John last year, helping to shape that conversation for the industry overall. I also, in my spare time, I started a social enterprise called Empower the Family. We are delivering Ireland's first social student housing development by 2023. And that earned me a spot on this year's Forbes 30 Under 30 list. And we are the only female-led Irish company to be on the list this year, which is just an incredible achievement given I started it 2 years ago as this crazy 24-year-old who had a real vision to create better social inclusion in our education system. So yeah, so that's me. Thank you.
What a fabulous panel. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's so inspiring. Suki, this day 2 years ago, you introduced me to a group in New York, and I walked through New York Pride and past the Stonewall Inn, and it was an incredibly moving and inspirational, inspiring and very humbling experience. You have been a great inspiration in Ireland in terms of your work and involve, and this year you've taken the step to move it to on an intersectional basis. Little could you possibly have known how the world would provide this wonderful opportunity for us to actually come together in a way that everybody now understands. Tell us a little bit about what your understanding of intersectionality in terms of how we can support each other in the 21st century and where we're going next.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really, really great to be here and be joined by these great people. So thank you for having me on the panel. Yeah, I mean, intersectionality we think is really important. I know we introduced it last year into Ireland, but we kind of switched because initially we started as Outstanding, which focused on LGBT. And then very quickly, about 18 months afterwards, I was very conscious of the fact that me personally, being gay and Indian, doing lots on the gay side, but not enough for the ethnic minority side of me. So we launched Empower, which is the ethnic minority side. And then realizing that we don't want to be complacent about gender, we also launched Heroes, which is the women's initiative, and then created Involve that sat above it to try and bring the three communities together. So intersectionality means working across those communities, but for us, it also means about trying to engage the allies for those communities too. Because as the minorities, we can't do it on our own. We need the majority to support us too. So we need straight leaders to help the LGBT community. We need white people to help people of color, and we need men to help women. So as we all know, representation at the very top of business, be it in leadership roles or the board, is still largely filled by the straight white man. Or in the boardroom, as I've heard once, worms, white old rich men. which I quite liked. And I kind of stole that from someone that I heard. But so it's really important that we can engage them on the subject, because they're the ones that have a lot of influence and power to help us. And I think the journey to inclusion has to be, the reason why we're at this moment with Black Lives Matter is because I think there has been a lot of lip service paid to ethnic minority inclusion. And what we've seen is that people are angry, and they're angry because they haven't seen enough change. But it does feel like a very moral moment for change, where the last few weeks, you can imagine, our inbox and my phone has been off the hook, because we've already been banging this drum around representation for the last 9 years, and also driving intersectional inclusion via Involve for the last 7 years. So it's an opportune moment for companies to actually create something meaningful. And I've had some really hopeful conversations where I do feel like companies are being a little bit more proactive about their talent management, their recruiting, their promotions, and just trying to do things differently to really support the community. But we have to also remember that not every company knows what to do. So part of what we do in Audelis and Involve is show you the how. That's why we're around, is to show you how to recruit senior leaders in an inclusive and diverse way, but also how you can make sure everyone belongs.
And tell us, Suki, from your perspective, what's the significant change you've seen even in the last number of days? Tell us about the Times article last week and how that came about.
Yeah, actually I have to say, like, it's things like, so the reason I launched Audelis, for instance, on the search side is because I've been in executive search for about 10 years. And I was very conscious that when seeing clients, they'd always talk to me about wanting to recruit women. And I'd be like, great, really support women, think it's really important. But what about other diversity characteristics? So trying to always widen the definition. So I've always had to bring ethnicity to the table when I've had that conversation. And LGBT wasn't even on the agenda. They're not even thinking about it, like setting targets or thinking about going to proactively find LGBT talent at the top. But what I found recently in the last few weeks, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, is companies are proactively saying, we really want to reach the widest diverse talent pool possible, including ethnicity. So rather than me having to start the conversation, they're already doing it. Another example is we're recruiting a chief data scientist for a tech company. And when we took the brief, which would have been about a month ago, they were very much focused on gender. We really want to hire a woman. We don't have a woman in the data leadership team globally. And I was like, great, we can do that. We're going to find the best candidate. We'll look for everyone. What about ethnicity? They're like, yep, it's important, but for us, the priority is gender. And obviously in the last few weeks, they've called into the office and they've said, well, you know that role that you guys have been retained for? Actually, you know what, ethnicity is really important. And we really would like some support. And we're kind of like, well, that's pretty obvious and we were already doing that, but thank you for letting us know. And we're going to come back to you with a long list soon.
Great.
So just seeing the fact that they're proactively coming to us has been a big shift.
Fantastic.
And I have to say, that's what's given me hope.
Well, it is great to hear that there's some positive action, because we're all conscious that we can all talk, but we want to see the action. So in terms of key actions, we might come back towards the end, Suki, if that's okay, in terms of specific actions you might come back to. We might hear from the other panelists and then come back to see specifically how you think we can bring it all together. Thank you so much for outlining all of that to us.
That's okay.
And we are going to be coming back to you to say thank you for the great work you're doing in London. And I know you're looking to the US, and we are looking forward to talking to you about what we're going to do in Dublin as well. So we'll be back to you.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much, Suki. And to you, John, thanks a million for joining us. John, I'm conscious that having been sort of one of the first to the table sort of 10 years ago, and certainly the marriage referendum 5 years ago, how would you say you can share your experience and the lived experience in terms of the LGBT community with the intersectional approach that we now want to take? And how can you think we can take the best of the learnings from the past and apply them now, today, for the future?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, Aisling, and everyone can only do what you feel able to do. So maybe I'll just tell you a little bit of my story and the things I've got involved in and why I felt it was important to do it. So you're right. We had the marriage referendum in this country 5 years ago. I'd been involved for many, many years before that in terms of various volunteering efforts and through the bad days, so to speak. And once we came out of the referendum, I think in this country, we invest so much in these referendum, and then there's a result and we feel as if, it's one and done. And I was very conscious that, there were so many things left undone from an LGBT perspective. And, also recognizing that there was very little I could do in terms of some of those trickier issues You know, and we speak of adoption rights, policy within government, schools, and how LGBT is taught at curriculum level, you know, developing awareness, and a whole program of activity around trans rights. So, but you know, what I could do, I felt, was, you know, from a professional perspective, was provide some support to Belong To. So got involved with Belong To, which is an amazing organization supporting young people, but they wished to go nationwide, but didn't have the funds. So developed with Belong To the concept of the Rainbow Ball, which is an annual corporate fundraising event each year. And, you know, we're still holding the date in November of this year. And it's really important that, notwithstanding the fact in this country, you know, for the last 5 years, the government, we've had strong LGBT representation. There are lots of organizations which are struggling for funding and continue to struggle for funding. And so I felt personally that was something I could do. From a business level, we have supported a number of the organizations in this space in terms of partnership approach. You know, we're very conscious that each organization is different. And even this year, in the absence of the ability to have a parade, I think it brings that discussion around the whole corporatization of Pride to the fore. And in those organizations where you do nothing except have a parade and spend your budget on the parade, I think it'll be very evident that there's nothing behind it. And I think in those organizations, you know, as a call out, and you spoke about being an action-oriented session, you know, employees have got to call out that budgets need to be recast in a different way, to have much more focus in terms of staff engagement and awareness, much more support to the organizations in the community, and to affect positive change out of what is really, you know, a difficult time. And so, you know, we're all struggling in this environment, but I think both personally and professionally, there are ways we can all get involved, but we need to be very clear. There is so much more to be done, and we need to all consider how we can get involved.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, John. And is there anything specific that you would suggest could be a learning from, say, the progress made, particularly in Ireland over the last 5 years, that can be offered to this discussion we're now having, this intersectional discussion?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, you know, it goes without saying, and feel as if I'm preaching to converted here, that, you know, the LGBT community is acutely able to recognize inequality of treatment. We're acutely able to recognize that sense of not belonging. And I think, you know, what we've done so far in terms of providing allyship this month to Black Lives Matter is really important. We need to remember that you know, this whole Pride movement isn't glitter and tiaras. This rose out of protests, out of activism, and we need to continue to, you know, hold those things very dearly. So I would think that as we advocate and as we fight for rights that, as I say, are still yet unwon, we must be very conscious of bringing those allies with us and share their battles. Because as we know, even if you look over the last 5 years, in the area of trans rights, it is extremely difficult. Each battle needs to be fought, and we have skills, I think, which are able to be transferable across sections and are very relevant in the current environment.
Well, thank you so much, John, and thank you in particular for giving me the perfect segue as I move on to talk to Kirsty. So thank you for that. It's very generous of you. About a year and a half ago, Kirsty and I were involved in an Involve event, and we were discussing how it has to go beyond Pride. It has to go beyond the colours of the rainbow in a flashy, colourful event in June every year. And we agreed that what we try and do is mark Transgender Day of Awareness in November and have an event in November which actually focuses on those occasions and on the rights of the trans community and how we can do that. And Involve last year had Kirsty and I speak together. I as an ally, as a parent of a trans child, and Kirsty through her lived experience. And Kirsty has my profound respect. She's given me some of the best advice I've ever received that I so dearly need and I'm delighted to receive. So Kirsty, without further ado, over to you to share your lived experience and how we can learn from you, please.
Well, thank you very much, Aisling. I'm hope I can live up to that top billing there.
Always.
So yeah, I have, as I said, I've worked in Bank of Ireland for a long time, over 25 years. So I'd already built up an awful lot of contacts and had established a lot of relationships with, internal and external to the bank when I finally came out in 2017. And that was something that kind of opened the floodgates. And, in the years really leading up to me coming out as trans, I knew this was going to happen, and I knew I had to transition. And I had spent quite a lot of time looking through all the HR material I could find within the bank, trying to find out what is the policy, what's going to happen to me, am I going to be supported, what are the protocols that other people are going to have to contend with, dealing with me in my transition. And it was something that I worried about greatly, particularly because I'm in a customer-facing job. I deal with business owners day to day. That's my day job. So also I obviously worried how they would react as well. And it's not something you can ask about without outing yourself. So I struggled for some time. In the end, I just had to take the plunge. And the bank and my customers that I deal with day to day have, without exception, been wonderful with me, and I've had a hugely positive coming out and transition experience, which continues to this day. So once I actually came out, I suppose I'd opened the floodgates for me, and I really tried to get more involved in the community and in advocacy, because my prime motivation really is for somebody who is coming out, whether you're coming out as trans, coming out as gay, bi, whatever, coming out is a big scary thing to do for anybody who's going to do it. And if, in my own small way, if I can help in any way at all to say, look, it is a hard thing to do, it's a brave thing to do, but when you do it, there is a community here of people who is going to support you, who is going to have your back. And that is a community of colleagues and a community of managers and senior management in work, and a network of similar individuals who work in similar roles to you in other organizations. So I've got involved in the With Pride network, first of all, as Northern Ireland rep. I led, Bank of Ireland had never taken part in Belfast Pride when I came out. So we put that right in 2018. I was a small part in the initiative that led to Bank of Ireland being the first Irish-owned bank to sign up to the Businesses for Love Equality campaign, which thankfully has been successful this year. Last year, I became involved in Fusion. Fusion is the Financial Services Inclusion Network. You'll know, Aisling, there's a similar organization called Outlaw, which is like a network of the LGBTQ networks of the legal profession. Well, Fusion is in the financial services profession. So I was involved in getting that set up in Northern Ireland last year. So that's all about helping. Different financial services companies are not competing with each other in trying to be more inclusive. We're trying to help each other in being more inclusive. So, with Fusion, we are trying to promote best practices throughout our industry. And we're trying to improve development opportunities, networking opportunities for LGBT plus professionals, all these things to let people know that when you come out, this network of support is here for you, that you are not causing yourself problems in your career when you come out. You have got people who have been on this journey before you, and you will be part of a group of people who are on this journey together, and we will support you. So there's so many things that ways which we can all get involved with, and the examples I've given are examples from my job in the Bank of Ireland and my sector in the financial services sector. But wherever you work, there will be something similar. And if there's not something similar, start it. Because 5 years ago, I could never have foreseen myself doing what I have done. But you just get on with it, because I know what I went through before I came out. And I don't want other people to go through that. Thank
you so much, Kirsty. You're an inspiration to us all. And it's I'm really glad that you've referenced the global groups and the umbrella groups, where individuals sort of within either financial services and Fusion may see each other as competitors, within Outlaw, as law firms may see each other as competitors, or even within the Chartered Accountants Ireland may see each other as competitors, because we are all in this together. And it is really important that if we're going to stick to adages such as bring your whole self to work, we have to really know what that means. You inspired us in Evershed Sutherland to look beyond our transitioning at work policy, and we have developed a gender expression and identity at work policy. And only 4 people like you who can actually guide us in terms of what we're doing. Nobody knows where to start. So thank you for being that voice and helping us all to see that it does require putting one foot in front of the other, not necessarily knowing that you're doing all the right things, but just getting on with it. If we waited for perfection, we'd be still waiting. So it's incredibly positive for us to have you prepared to talk to us and share your journey and share your actual lived experience. Thank you so much, Kirsty. Before we move on, can I just ask, I'm conscious when we spoke previously, you told me about the relationship you developed with your sort of HR manager and how it came to you providing an award to her on the basis that you'd won it collectively. One of the things you and I have talked about previously are hidden heroes. Would you mind just giving us an overview of that award that you got together and that fantastic story?
I actually didn't I nominated her for the award. I nominated her. I'll name her. Her name is Kerry Hinks. I don't know if she's on or not. She was just unbelievably supportive in my transition, and the amount of work that she put in to preparing the way for me. I mean, from organizing goodness knows how many training sessions, reaching out to the various community groups to provide advice that she was doing the right thing, because she'd never done this before. And my line manager as well, my senior client manager, a woman called Liz McKee, the two of them worked so hard on my transition plan with me. We had very, very regular meetings planning exactly what was going to happen, everything down to a fine art. So the bank was running recognition awards at the tail end of that year, and I nominated the two of them jointly. So they won the local award in Northern Ireland, and then they ended up going forward to the Bank of Ireland UK final, which was in London in December. And actually, unfortunately, Kerry was unable to go to that because she was on holiday somewhere in America, I think. So I got her seat in the plane. I went to the award ceremony in London, and they won the award. So I had to go up and accept it on her behalf. So the top and tail to my story that I always tell everybody is in 2017, I started the year in January, terrified, absolutely terrified, coming out to my line manager. And I ended the same year in December, standing beside her on a stage in front of 200 applauding colleagues as she got an award for the work she'd done on my transition plan. It was just incredible.
Amazing. Gets me every time, Kirsty. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us all. And thank you for everything you do to help everybody who's on that individual journey. Thank you so much. Deborah, last but by no means absolute least, these would be tough shoes to follow if it wasn't for you being the person to fill them. Tell us, where are you at on your journey? How have you come to the fore within your organization and in your path, and how have you found your voice?
Sorry. So it's actually been a bit of a weird journey. For me, I'd had quite a difficult childhood, and it wasn't until I started speaking about that to help one of the charities who had helped me when I was younger raise funds. It was only when I started speaking about that I started, I don't know, just accepting who I was. I started going on a self-acceptance journey, and that self-acceptance journey brought up so much that I didn't understand. I thought I'd always been like normal and super bubbly and super happy-go-lucky or whatever in terms of being in college and who I was in work. And after I came out with my story, I felt so naked. I felt so vulnerable because everyone usually sees me as this really tough person. People make all of these assumptions about me. If I present myself very well, then people make lots of assumptions about me coming from like nice background or blah blah blah. So people didn't even know I used to be poor. Never mind that I used to be in care and I wasn't raised by my parents, or very few people even knew that I not that I hid it, but very few people knew that I had a son. And once I came out my story and that part of me, then the other parts of me that I was ashamed of, that I was scared to share with the world, it just became a no-brainer to start using my voice to talk about the other things that I needed to talk about, to support the people in the communities that I represent. I was speaking about homelessness. I was speaking, and I still do. That's what my charity is all about, is social inclusion, breaking that cycle, that social welfare cycle, that poverty cycle that exists in disadvantaged communities. And I was doing that, and I was doing all of that work. And then people of color were coming to me and saying, but you should be helping us as well. You have a microphone. People listen to you. People in your organization and other organizations listen to you. You should be speaking for us. You should be helping us as well. And I had to dig deep about what was holding me back about that, what was holding me back from representing and speaking on behalf of the community that I represent, the community that people see when they look at me anyways. And it was self-hatred. It was self-hatred for the color of my skin. It was a journey I had to go on to literally unlearn everything I knew about race, and relearn everything I needed to understand. And I think a lot of that is just down to the level of education that we have around this stuff. Like even in Ireland, there's a whole conversation about how Black people didn't exist here before 20 years ago. That's not true. That's not true. You go back to the mother and baby homes, and they're mixed race Irish children who were treated horribly during that time. So they've existed for a very long time. So that's how I found my voice around advocating for socioeconomic groups and around minorities and race. And then I met this incredible group of friends, and one of the girls in the group is a gay Black woman, Zainab Bolade. She presents on Nationwide and RT. And it was just the weirdest thing to me, because it was like, you're allowed to be Black and gay. I was like, you're allowed to do that? And to put that into context, again, like every community has their stuff, and this is why the intersectional conversations are important, because you learn and you share and you grow from that. And in the Black community in particular, we really, really need our allies. We really, really need to know. There's very few Black people that that will be able to feel comfortable enough to come out because of the stigma that's there with their own family, not only with their own family, but with their friends. This is just something in our community that is just really, really not understood, and is really, really there's still a lot of issues there. There's still a lot of homophobia in our community. So that led to me coming out. I still haven't told my dad. And actually, every time I put my son, who's 11, in timeout, he says he's going to tell my dad. He's going to out me. He's only joking, of course, but and myself and Ashling's kids are both in the same class in school together, and it's just incredible to go on that journey. And I really understood that for myself, honestly. Even when I came out to Liam, who's my son, he was like, so again, for Liam, he's grown up around I've always had my best friends are gay. I've always had male gay friends that are white, and so Liam would have grown up around them when I was in college and stuff. They'd all be here, blah blah blah, and Liam would be like, "Is Mark your boyfriend?" And I'm like, "No, Mark doesn't like girls." And then with the marriage referendum and stuff, he was seeing all of the posters, and he was like, what's the no poster or whatever about? I can't even remember, whatever way it was. And I explained it to him. He was like, well, that's ridiculous. You should be able to marry whoever you want. So for Liam, these things are all very common sense. And even when Ashling's son arrived into her class, like Liam was okay, just like, okay. Like, he was just, it really just, he genuinely he's grown. I've raised him to have these conversations, and we'll talk a bit more probably about that in terms of actions that allies can take. But you know, a part of it is educating not only ourselves but others about other communities. So obviously I only came out last summer, but we've been having conversations about the LGBT plus community in this house since Liam was like 3, you know. So there was, that's why to Liam he was just like, so he just did not, it wasn't a thing. And so that's why it's really important when we're saying the Black Lives Matter movement conversation is now happening, the Trans Lives Matter movement is now happening. Just because you're not specifically affected by it doesn't mean you can't help educate yourself and educate others, and to create more inclusive communities and communities that we work and live in. And I suppose that's how I found my voice. It was really frustrating going on that journey, and you know, lots of different opinions, and just it was a lot to be going through. And for me, I always try and do what's right and what's fair, and given the voice that I had, given the platform I already had, I just felt like this was a journey around diversity and inclusion and fighting for more inclusive organizations that I genuinely felt I had a responsibility to do. But Aisling told me something really beautiful the other day. She said, it's an opportunity, not a responsibility. And that made me feel a lot better, because it's felt like a burden I'm carrying on my own shoulders for a really long time. And it's really amazing to see so many people of colour now as well coming out and talking about their own stories and their own experiences of being in Ireland around race, because the narrative for a really long time was racism doesn't exist in Ireland, you know, and the only people that said that were white people. No people of colour said that. You'd be watching Virgin Media or whatever, and there's this all white panel, maybe one black person, and the one black person is like talking about racism, and all the other white people are telling them, oh no, we don't have that here. And it's like, lads, you know. So I think that really beautiful conversation is happening, similar to what Suki's saying. You know, there's the same people that I was having conversations where I was having conversations about this pre-COVID are now the people who are reaching out to me and sending me videos like, oh my God, I saw this, and they're texting me and they're saying, I stand with you, I have your back. It's like CEOs, partners, just people across all walks of life. My friends, there's people who are even just like people of all levels in my organization have texted me, right? It's just really, really lovely to see that support and that understanding for the emotional roller coaster that's happening right now. But also it's really important that I took a step back and I understood what I wanted to say, because I do understand that I do have a microphone. So I took a week off 2 weeks ago, actually, when the Black Lives Matter movement started to pick up, just for annual leave. Just, it was perfectly timed. And for that week, like, it was a lot of crying, definitely a lot of crying, but it was a lot of reflecting and listening, because it was really important for me to listen to what everyone was saying so that I understood how best to use the microphone that I had to speak for the people that I wanted to speak for, and also to understand. It was also great for me to be able to pass the mic. So say I was getting media requests and I was going, lads, I'm not the only black person in Ireland. In a way, they're like, oh, we speak so articulately. I'm like, yeah, lots of other people do. And I'm giving them names. I'm like, this is the person who should be speaking on it. This person's an academic. I'm not an academic. I can't tell you about systemic racism. Well, I can, but not to the same level that someone who is a lecturer in Black Studies can in UCD and different things like that. So it's really important to understand when to pass the mic as well. And it's also really incredible to see our allies giving us the mic. That's the hashtag that's going around on social media at the moment, pass the mic. So it's really, so what that is female leaders are giving their social media accounts over to people of colour to run for the day to share their messages. So it's just really incredible. And you have people like Ariana Huffington and, you know, who runs the Huffington Post and stuff like that, and taking part in it. So it's just really incredible to see that going on. So I'm going to stop talking now because that's probably a lot.
Well, I couldn't possibly interrupt you for 1,000 reasons, Deborah. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. But also thank you for giving me the perfect segue, which is to pass the mic. So if I can say, from your perspective, Suki, can I come to you first? Deborah, I'm conscious I don't want to in any way, you know, talk over your experience. It is yours. We're here, those of us who have the white privilege, we're here to unlearn and relearn, as you have been educating me, and so gently over the last few weeks, and I'm so grateful to you for it. Suki, have you any key issues where we've heard from Deborah? This is not a US issue. We're all conscious of that. It's very real for us in every country, but there are similarities that flow across. From Involve's perspective, are there any key suggestions you might be in a position to share with us that we can all take?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Deborah, that's an amazing story, and I think you're fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. And we all support you, we're all behind you, and ignore the haters, ignore well, you can't ignore the racism, but know that there is more good in the world than there is bad. So, and I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think you raised some really interesting points around like Black Lives Matter and Pride Month. There have been some pretty horrible comments from our own community around this issue, things around, you know, Black Lives Matter hijacking Pride Month, and it being the focus and not trying to colonize this month, which are just horrendous, which kind of highlights the racism that exists within our community. But then we have to also remember that there are problems on the other side where the Black community might be perceived to be homophobic, or the wider ethnic minority community. So a lot of this is also about how do we build bridges and how do we break down those silos? Because as you've seen with Deborah and myself, we tick more than one box. How do we have to join the ethnic minority community, or do you have to join the LGBT one? And with you, Deborah, also the gender group, because actually sometimes the gender community can be very focused on middle and upper class white women. So it doesn't include the intersections of gender. So I think for me, it's definitely about trying to, again, work intersection, bring the communities together. So how often do you reach over the aisle to try and do like a joint event with the ethnic minority community and LGBT? How often do the ERGs connect on sharing experiences to see how they can engage the senior leadership to do more or invest more into this agenda? Because as John was mentioning earlier, in this crisis, companies might be saying that they want to be diverse and inclusive, yet they're slashing the budgets for diversity and inclusion. And you can't do diversity and inclusion without investing into it. And then you've got the element of society and social impact, where a lot of nonprofits that Kirsty mentioned are struggling for funding. So I did a Pride panel yesterday. We were asked to give like a takeaway at the very end. Mine was, use your privilege for good. Like, we're not out in the streets marching, spending money on alcoholic drinks, spending money on merchandise. Use that money and donate it to a local LGBT charity in your country to support your local community. I'm on the board of Outright Action International in New York, and I feel as though we should be giving money to that organization. They've got lots of work they do in the Global South to support our LGBT community. I'm a patron for AKT in London that supports homeless youth in the UK. Those are organizations that desperately need funds right now. And if you have any privilege or any spare cash, give it to the communities that need it. So I think there's a bit in there about how you're doing stuff inside work, but let's not forget also the role we play in society as well. And for me, I really want to give the message about giving back, given what's happening in the world.
That's fantastic, Suki. Thank you so much. Can I say, so we can all do that personally. We can use our privilege, take our privilege and what we can afford to contribute to the charities that we can identify ourselves. We're conscious that there are moments in time, and right now we have a moment in time in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. I genuinely feel that. I have that sense, and I'm conscious of my privilege when I say that, so I don't want to overstate that. But I'm conscious that if we look to John and how far we've come, specifically in the last 5 years in terms of LGBT rights, in terms of how Pride has become a day in the diary that the country looks forward to. It used to be, I mean, I remember for the first time I said, is it a family-friendly day? Is it something we can all go to together? My kid's first Pride, he said, everybody loves us. This is amazing. It was an incredibly inspiring day. Then we move on and we have things like the Belong To Ball, which tends to fall in around the time of Transgender Day of Awareness. in which case lots of us have a big, vocal movement and a day or an occasion when we really celebrate each other. We look to the past, and we mourn those who have lost their lives because of their gender or their non-conforming gender as they used to be seen. But now what do we do about the Black Lives Matter movement? How do we move this forward? How do we make sure this isn't a moment in time that's lost and erased? How do we galvanize this and bring it forward? Suki, can I ask you first? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we need to remember, for me, when we do like Pride Month or Black History Month, I feel like we should be celebrating Pride every day.
Yeah.
Same with International Women's Day. Why is it just in March? Like, we should be celebrating diversity and inclusion every day throughout the year, and to try and that would encourage intersectionality. There are two schools of thoughts about doing Pride Month, because I get it. It puts a focus on it. It gets people thinking about the issues. It starts the conversation. People take action. But what happens from the 1st of July? Does that just stop? What happens to your LGBT community? Black History Month. Does that mean the history doesn't apply the month after? And what we see now is that we do need to work more intersectionally to ensure that we're helping all communities. But we have to also remember that the Black community's house is on fire right now. Black lives matter. Simple as that. So when you see comments around all lives matter, that shows you what the issue is. It shows you that they think that they're more important. And I'm not saying that there is a hierarchy, but there are more issues right now with the Black community that we need to fix. And we have to remember that inclusion is not a zero-sum game. It benefits everyone. The Black community is not trying to take rights away from anyone else. The trans community is not trying to do that either. We have to keep a very close eye on the trans rights agenda, given what's happening in the US and the eroding of health rights. But also, we've got something to celebrate. Remember, the Supreme Court just passed the law to give LGBT workplace rights across the country. Now, so lots of people are celebrating it. I'm kind of like, about bloody time. It's 2020. But then what I also learned is that the protections don't cover micro businesses. So companies that have less than 15 people, they're not protected. So now companies in the US are thinking about, well, how can they support those micro businesses to give that support to the LGBT community? So even then, LGBT employees in micro businesses aren't protected. So we just got to remember that we can't be complacent. We have to constantly keep reminding people about the challenges, but it is okay to sometimes focus on one area so that we can try and move the agenda forward, but remember that everyone benefits.
Okay, thank you very much, Suki. I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious, I could sit here talking to you all, listening and learning from you all literally all night long, but apparently this is not the platform and I'm not allowed. So I'm going to ask if I can, and Suki, I might come back and finish with you if that's okay, but I might go to John, Kirsty and Deborah first, just to see, is there a single thing that you would suggest that you would like us all to take away as an action? We've all said we want to be action focused. This is so that we can all be the change we want to be and inspire others to do likewise. John, is there any one action that you would suggest for us all?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all share the feeling that, as we come out of this lockdown period, we don't want just to be able to bake banana bread. I mean, just being a little bit provocative, but, we can do things a different way when we emerge from this. And I think if there was one ask, it would be that everyone here, make a personal commitment to do more. And that more could be sign up as a volunteer to your local charity, look at becoming a mental health ambassador. If you're at a level where you would like to sit on a board of an NGO or a charity, or if none of those, to be a visible ally at work for any of the causes that we've spoken. So, I firmly believe this is an opportunity for change. Please don't come back to what we used to call work and do things the same way. Do them differently, make a personal commitment to do something to affect change. And if we all do that, change will happen.
Move forward, not back. Thank you so much, John. Kirsty, what about you? Have you a specific share that you would like to share to save for us to take away with us today?
Well, I think I would kind of echo a lot of what John said there. I think a lot of how we move things forward has to be done on a personal level rather than necessarily a corporate level. And what we do as a corporation in all our businesses that we work with is always great, and is very much worth doing. But I think a lot of transphobia, a lot of racism, a lot of homophobia is based in ignorance, and not willful ignorance, but just a lack of knowledge, a lack of exposure, a lack of visibility. So I would just say to people, if you're a cis person, a straight person, a white person, and you're watching this and you work somewhere where you know there's a gay person in your work, and you know there's a trans person in your work, or you know there's a black person or an Asian person or whatever, talk to them. You know,
Reach out.
you don't have to be bosom buddies, but reach out, make human contact, understand them, understand who they are, what their needs are, and just establish common ground as human beings.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. There's a common theme here. Let's stop asking our corporates to do the work for us. Let's make it personal and do it ourselves. Thank you so much, Kirsty. Deborah, have you something specific? And I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to keep you short. My apologies.
You're okay. Sorry, I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm actually going to go the corporate way. There is, pre-COVID, the unemployment rate in Ireland was 5.5% overall. For Black men, it was over 40%. So there is a huge issue with people of colour in Ireland being able to get on the employment ladder, but then ensuring that they're protected and our spaces are inclusive. So I would say, in terms of that, I would just love everyone's pledge to pledge to do more around intersectional diversity, intersectional inclusion, and creating 100% inclusive cultures.
Thank you so much. Well done. Good call. And last to you, Suki, have you a one single ask, if you can encapsulate a single ask for us?
I mean, it's very hard to ask me for one single ask because I have so many asks usually, but that is a shocking statistic, Deborah. And I have to say, if the current Black Lives Matter movement doesn't change that percentage for the Black community in Ireland, it's going to be very tone deaf of Irish business to not be hiring some of that Black community. It's about, as you say, creating opportunity. I think it's very much around just remembering that the LGBT community is rich, full of different cultures and backgrounds, and let's not forget the intersection with the Black community, the Indian community, women even, and just trying to educate ourselves and build bridges across those communities. And I think it's really important, given that it's Pride, we want to be the rainbow in someone's cloud. Yes, I saved that for you.
Fantastic.
I love that.
What a beautiful finish. Well, I have to say, on behalf of everybody who's joined us today, everyone who's going to be listening to this afterwards, you have been the most fantastic panel. Each of you sharing with such humility, such honesty, and showing your vulnerabilities, which is just so heart-rending and heartwarming for the rest of us. Thank you so much for all that you do today and every day. And thank you for sharing all your experiences and giving us specific asks. So we know what we have to do as a group. We know what we have to ask our colleagues to do. We know what we have to ask our allies to do. Thank you so much. Happy Pride, everybody. Happy intersectional Pride. Pride for all. Thank you all so much.